My first big mistake in business was, so I had this vision, I had this idea. I was like working on the business until I had something to lose, right? Until I like left my job and I was 100% reliant to provide for my family from this thing. And I got away from building a business and kind of got into the don't screw it up business.
Matt Woolley Podcast.
All right, so my guest today is my friend and business associate, James Harris. James, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man.
All right, so as we always do here on the Matt Woolley Podcast, we give a little bit of a rundown as to who is James Harris. So James Harris has been a replenishment analyst for Walmart. James Harris has been customer business manager for Unilever, a national account manager for Warner Brothers, director of sales for Sleep Innovations, a facilitator for 8th and Walton, and what he's currently known as the founder and CEO of High Impact Analytics, which you've been doing since 2010. 2007.
We rebranded in 2010.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's actually a fun part of the story because I started the thing like a year after my wife and I got married.
Okay.
I believe July was the first like billable month. And then our twins were born.
You got twins.
May 2008.
Oh, awesome.
And during that time I was employed, but I had this thing on the side. And I got a phone call. I think I took 3 days off when they were born.
I understand.
Paternity leave wasn't much of a thing in the early aughts. But I'm walking into the hospital room right before it's about to happen. My boss with one of those last companies calls, and at the time I was mass discount channel, so I was already traveling all the time. Like, we're gonna promote you and put you over the East Coast. It's like, oh, who's taking the mass discount? Like, oh no, you get to keep. So I hung up, but I knew that day, like, I'm turning in 2 weeks' notice as soon as we get this bill paid for.
That's awesome.
It was a couple of weeks after they were born. I went full time with the company.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's go back a little bit. Now you've set the intrigue right up front. Well, let's go back a little. Where are you from?
Silent Springs.
Silent Springs. So you're a local guy. Been here the whole time.
Yeah, I did with Unilever. I did 2.5 years in Minneapolis. Otherwise, I've been.
Oh wow. Okay, so you're truly one of the guys that have been part of the community. Before it was
growing up.
What
I
it is.
Graduated high school in the late '90s. Like, the only reason to come to Rogers or Bentonville was if you had a game. Mm-hmm. And that just has transformed over the last 30 years. It's been pretty cool to see.
Well, I've been here since 2002, and I mean, just the changes I've seen. But you talk to guys like, and I have several friends that have been here as well that have just been, they say it's just wild, but I've just since 2002, it's wild.
Yeah.
Like where we're at used to be a field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everything here used to be.
Right.
Right. Either a cow pasture or a chicken farm.
That's awesome. Okay, so you grew up in Silent Springs. What did young James aspire to be?
Yeah. I like, coming out of high school, I didn't have just a ton of direction, like what I wanted to do. All I knew is I wanted to live on my own. I wanted to work. And I thought I could probably do sales. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd had enough experiences where I think maybe sales is my.
What did you do in high school? Did you work in high school? Were you sports? What did you do?
I worked in every restaurant in Silent Springs. Worked at Mama Z's for a while. That was fun.
What did you do?
I cooked. I waited.
Nice.
I illegally bartended. Like,
awesome.
Where I did landscaping was my first job, and realized I'm like deathly allergic to poison ivy. Give that up.
Yeah, all those aspirations out the window.
Yeah,
no, that's awesome.
So I was working at Mama Z's when I moved into my own place, and looking for like a business job. And there's this place that's unfortunately it's defunct now, but it was in Rogers called Southern Signature. Sauces, dressings, seasoning, salts, all that kind of stuff. And my dad had a connection there, so I met the guy that was running the company. I said I want to go into sales, and he goes, "Okay, you look 12." It was what I
You still look fairly young. I've asked you when I asked you how old you were. I was like, we're about in the same age group, but you have one of those.
It's the one part of my DNA that's working out. But he said, what I need right now is somebody to dig trenches. So the water runoff from the guttering or whatever was backing up in the thing. So July, August, that summer, I just dug trenches and drank water out of the hose. But I told him, I was like, I'll do that. I'll do any other job you give me, but once a week I'm going to come in and ask for a sales job. About 6 months in, I got it.
That's awesome.
So that was my first work experience.
Did you go to college?
In a very roundabout way, and no.
Neither did I. That's why I was like, whenever you told me, because we'd had an initial conversation before we started filming, but you said you started at like 19, so so you're self-starter essentially.
Yeah. So I did 18 months out of high school. I didn't go to school. I just worked. Then I did 18 months or 3 semesters in college full time, and just couldn't stand it. It's one of the things I wish I could do over, because I didn't have that going from child to adult transition thing. It was just child adult without the in between part.
Well, same here. I know what you're talking about.
But I could, I had good grades. I worked hard, studied and everything. I couldn't stand not feeling like I was progressing in life.
No, with you.
So I got my first supplier job when I was about 21, and then did classes at night until about 2005 when I left Unilever.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's like I'm not dissing the college route at all.
Yeah, sure.
There are certain things that you get, that help. It's kind of a trade-off. I've always talked about trade-off. A lot of people look at it for whatever reason, and I think maybe we're the kind of last generation that viewed it a little bit like that. The end of the access.
It was optional.
Yeah. The end of the access, beginning of the millennials are a stark contrast, because now my son and a lot of his friends are like, there's no way, they don't want to incur the debt, and they don't see.
And younger people are looking at tech schools. And
Well, and that's a good thing, dude, because we need that. Absolutely. Because because I'm telling you, they're fixing to name their price.
Yeah.
Because once all the boomers, if you've seen the stats, it's not going to be pretty, because there's going to be so many people because there's a gap in those trades.
Right.
Yeah. But, thank goodness.
Yeah, I guess it's like Gen X, we don't want to get our hands dirty.
And into the millennials, but my son, and what happens is it's flip-flop, because college becomes so expensive.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, man, I don't know about this, because there is true.
Oh, you look at the chart of tuition increases versus cost of living increases in salaries, and the tuition's by far the
yes. All you gotta do is really listen to Mike Rowe for 10 minutes, and then you get it.
Yeah.
My Dirty Jobs. He's the guy that did Dirty Jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's a big advocate for the trades and
I
stuff.
used to watch that. Yeah.
And I did too. He'll throw all kinds of stuff at you that you're like, whoa, wait just a second. It's pretty alarming. But anyways, I digress. Let's get back to James. We didn't come here to talk about Mike Rowe. So you got into Walmart.
Yeah.
Let's run through the progression.
So very entry level sort of thing, but it was in replenishment, and I got to learn the systems that Walmart's use. They don't use those exact same systems anymore, but they did for the first 20 years of my career. So I had very good education there. I had 2 different bosses. One that was just my training boss, 3 months, and then my longer term boss, and they were both really great. I got to meet a bunch of suppliers. There's a particular merchant that would let me sit in on his meetings, even though that wasn't my job.
That's awesome.
Kind of just observing and taking notes. And after about a year and a half or so, I was like, I want to be in business, and I want to be on the other side of the desk.
Nice. Awesome. So how did that transition happen? So you just
So I went when I went to school. It had been January 2000, so right after the world was supposed to end.
Right. Y2K.
And I did, like I said, a year and a half. And I originally went to Arkansas Tech. A woman I'd worked with at Sunbeam Coleman, so a supplier, had offered me a job when I left Walmart. She's like, "Oh, if you're not at Walmart anymore, like, I'm not going to recruit you away, but we'd love to hire you." And I was like, "I'm going to try to do the school thing." So I call her back about a year and a half later, and she said, "We're having a hiring freeze, but my son is a supplier, and he's looking for somebody." So that was my first gig.
Nice.
I was working for Jeff Dunn at North Pole.
Okay.
Sales analyst.
Yeah.
Or analyst, that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So let's get into. So did you just carry this through going into the Warner Brothers Sleep Innovations? Is it kind of the same rinse and repeat building up into it?
I started building my binder.
Okay.
Of the business I wanted to create when I worked at North Pole.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was 2021.
Okay. So you had kind of a vision.
Just idea. It was a bunch of stuff that I didn't do, but just every time I had an idea, I'd print it or write it down or whatever. And I had, I knew I was going to start a business someday. I knew I still looked like I was 12, so I needed to get and I needed experience, right? Like I needed to have a marketable skill, which you just don't have when you're 20, So that's when it kind of started. I loved my time at Unilever.
Okay.
Had a few good bosses, a great mentor, rest in peace, Lee Simber, and then the vice president over national channels. Took a shine to me. So I had a great run there. I really, really enjoyed it. And I started here on the Walmart team as an analyst. I moved up to Minneapolis on the Target businesses category manager. And then that's when I moved into the customer business manager, so the sales role. So really didn't have a bad experience there at all. But I met my wife, who was living here. And my trajectory there was 3 or 4 more moves before I got back here. And I just didn't think that was going to be the way I wanted to start a family.
Right.
So that's why I left Unilever. And then Warner Brothers was just, no offense, it was just like the resume mistake. And then by the time I started at Sleep, I was like, all right, let's get an LLC and figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Like, let's start going.
Gotcha. Okay. So describe kind of what High Impact does as a whole. Give us the start. Yeah. Give us the evolution.
I mean, the original vision was, a brokerage. Even product development is something I'd still like to get more involved in. But with a team set up like a consumer packaged goods company. So I'd worked for small companies. I'd worked for Unilever, a huge company. I'd been on the Walmart side just enough to kind of see how, if you're really staffed for Walmart, you can succeed, and if you're not, you just can't. Like you have to deliver day in, day out. So I wanted to start a brokerage that looked like a CPG team, which at the time was fairly unique. It was kind of more handshake deals at that time. Now Harvest did start the same year, and they had a similar model, and they obviously been successful. Yeah, I think a lot of Ross and his leadership, but that was kind of the thing. And I didn't have a partner, and I didn't have financial backing.
Yeah, that's tough. You have to do things hard.
I was like, do I want to try to do all of it? Sales, analytics, the part that I felt was missing in the market. Or do we start with the services, the part that, isn't really in the market, and we layer on the brokerage later, which is what we ended up doing. So, ton of data analytics, replenishment, forecasting, digital now is a huge thing. One of my partners that you met, Charles Greathouse, he joined us in 22 and has really done a ton to stand up our brokerage, which is now our largest business unit. Analytics still staying strong, and that is kind of the core. Like even on the clients that we represent from a sales standpoint, we're still doing reporting, replenishment, in-stock correction.
So let's talk about that. So analytics was the core.
Yeah.
And I'm just making sure, obviously it's, analytics is in the name.
Yeah. We did kind of rebrand again in 23.
Okay.
So the legal name is still High Impact Analytics LLC, but we market High Impact.
Yeah.
Because we're
Very cool.
a little more than analytics.
So, I mean, you decided that, you knew you wanted to go straight into the analytics. I mean, let's just face the facts though, dude. That's not like, analytics isn't just everybody's cup of tea, nor does everybody do it successfully.
Yeah.
So did you want to do the most challenging thing first? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I thought that was the niche.
Yeah.
More than a handshake.
What was the beginning of the team look like?
First, it was just me. I did.
Was that a struggle getting off into that, or did you had the trust of relationships, or what was the build up there?
How did I get clients?
Yeah.
The first 3 I got from just dogged cold calling. And
Awesome.
one happened to end up being a pretty successful brokerage in their early days. So they ended up being like a much larger percent of the business than like a typical client would be. And then when I took it full time, I'd gotten to know Matt Pfeiffer and Nancy Woods at 8th and Walton, and they had a pretty young company. So I helped them with some content, and then I would facilitate like once a month. I would go somewhere, New York, San Francisco, whatever, and do these trainings. And then one day a week when I wasn't traveling, I would do a training. And we were their sole referral thing for services, which is, Jeff Clapper's a good friend, and he runs that now, and they do a lot more services with the time they didn't.
That's awesome. Okay.
So that was probably like my next 10, 12 clients were all referrals from that.
Gotcha.
A huge part of our start.
So, and I'm asking these questions because ours is a different side of the industry, but believe it or not, we have a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
So, as far as like building the business up, you had good referrals. That's the number one marketing, right? So that gets the core going. What were some of the struggles in the early days as far as like, entrepreneurship is concerned? Because everybody always talks about how, you always see the highlights of, being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you see the end. You don't see the beginning.
Yeah. And I don't think people, what you hear all the time is stuff like, and this is part of the reason why I started this podcast, is because there's people who's always talking about like the simple lay term things like, well, you just got to grind. You just got to want it. But they don't, and I will agree.
That matters.
It does matter. It does matter. But what are you sacrificing to do?
Yeah.
What does it do to your body? What does it do to your mind? What does it do to your family well-being? I mean, all of these things.
I had to learn a lot of hard lessons.
Right.
Hard lessons.
So let's hear it.
And the people around me had to experience it too. So just from the business side of things, like before I launched, I love thinking about business model. It's like my,
it's your thing.
thing. I just enjoy that.
Let me ask this question. So when you go down like you're driving down the road, let's just make something up. Let's say we venture away from Rogers. Let's go to Fayetteville. Okay. You're driving down College and you see that new business pop up.
I'm thinking weekly revenue.
yeah. And then so that's where I go. I go weekly revenue, and then I start thinking, who's their target customer? And then I say, well, how are they gonna expand this? Right.
And does the manager work 6 days a week or 5? And how do you substitute it? Like all of the logistics of this stuff.
That's awesome.
It's just it's what
I'm
my
right there with you.
brain does.
Yeah.
But when I launched,
hang on. So when you in that, so let's be honest. Sorry to interrupt, but that's you get trapped in that thought process. Now it's that same thought process that will. When I say trapped, you're a prisoner to it, because that's just how your brain works.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's an element of numbing.
Right.
I'm thinking about that. I'm not thinking about other things.
Right. So,
but I've done that since I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
I remember first time like daydreaming about, I saw myself in a high rise that I owned in my mind in math class when I was 10 years old, fourth grade. Like, it's just.
Would you say that helps?
I don't own a high rise.
No, I get it. I was about to ask, why haven't I been invited to the high rise, James? So in your, and this is honestly my selfish curiosity here, and you're going to have to keep me on track now. I think there's people, we're both kind of suffer of squirrel, here goes the squirrel.
Yes, yeah.
But when you think that.
I talk to anybody that works with me, or talk to my wife, or talk to my kid. Yeah.
Well, my assumption is that you are perceived as if I had to size you up based on what you've told me, you're a visionary type. You see the big picture, and you understand that probably it takes to get to that big picture. You see A to D
steps, yeah,
to H to L, and then there's the big picture.
And I'm not necessarily the one to get you from A to B.
Right.
That's somebody else's job.
120.
That's Matt Adams' job.
It's a 120%
head of operations.
Well, see, that's more. You're looking in the mirror, because that's me in a lot of ways. That's how I am, in the sense of like I can see that. I try to pick the business apart. Like, even when I see a product on shelf, I think, what does this take to make?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just fun. It's just escape.
It's like, yeah.
So my first big mistake in business was, so I had this vision, I had this idea. I was like working on the business until I had something to lose, right? Until I like left my job and I was 100% reliant to provide for my family from this thing. And I got away from building a business and kind of got into the don't screw it up business. Which is very self-defeating, right? And, you don't end up making good choices. That I worked a stupid amount, 6 days a week at least. Have had some health situations that I'm sure that contributed to. And you just got to grow up at some point. I don't know what your faith background is, but at some point, if you're the one trying and grasping, you're not trusting.
No, absolutely.
Right?
No.
And you got to move into that.
So I'm. You speaking of being a Christian? Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, just for clarity, on this podcast, you are who you are. I am a 120% professed Christian in all things, and I will be the first to tell you that I couldn't have made it through without God. Yeah. I couldn't have done it. And now,
it's my wife.
Yeah, right.
God and my wife.
Right, yeah, absolutely, 100% right there. Oh yeah, she's my Leslie's my rock. There's no question. But it's all about handing. It's what I've learned to say is handing the paddles over.
Yeah.
Because as a young guy, are you a control freak? No, not really. No. Okay.
I'm not detailed oriented enough.
You're not a micromanager?
No, I don't think so. I try not to be.
Okay.
I tend to so here's how I learned how to delegate, right? So I had traditional people that worked for me at Unilever and stuff like that. And that was different because you're just following a model. Coming into the end of 2017, so I've been in business about 10 years. Hadn't gotten it to where I wanted it to go at that point. Major burnout situation, I was not feeling good, not happy, not enjoying it. And my first partner, and it's still my partner, this is before he was the chief COO. He came in and to my office and he goes, "How would you describe our org structure?" Well, I guess there's a box here and boxes here and lines and whatever. He goes, "Okay. Can I tell you what I see?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." He flips the page over and he draws a circle and he puts a little hub in the middle. And then all these spikes go into the hub. And he goes, "This is our business model and you're in the middle. We can't grow because you can only do so much. I know you're working hard. I know you're here all the time. But we've hit a seal." And he was 100% right. So ending.
This is Charles.
No, this is Matt.
Matt M.
This
okay.
is 5 years before I met
okay.
Charles.
Okay. I was getting confused.
This is the end of 2017.
Okay, got you.
Charles joined in 22.
Okay.
So I did take a few days off around Christmas that year. like I'd work a day or two a week for 2 weeks, and I had some downtime. It was more time than I'd taken off in years. And I wrote out on my phone what I wanted next year to look like and what I wanted 5 years from now to look like. And I sent it to a few people. It was like, hold me accountable, because if we're not doing this, it's my fault. So first thing we did, we promoted Matt, made him, COO. So I'm not the operator anymore. I was focused on BD. I still had a desk. I still managed clients at the time, but the questions were starting to go to him instead of me, which freed up a lot of brain space to then start thinking, oh, where do I actually want to take this company, right? We started working with EOS, your entrepreneurial operating system.
Yeah.
Great.
Quarterly rocks.
Yeah. Dusty Pruitt is a really good friend of mine, and we were his first client when he became.
They're right.
They're called implementers.
Yeah, implementers. Yeah.
Huge help. Helped us make some decisions on.
Quick plug for that book. That's Traction. Great book. It's a good one.
It's a good one. And it just helped us make some hard decisions that I'd been sitting on. Of who we wanted to work with, what we wanted the business to even look like. I'd just been kind of following the momentum rather than creating it. So 2018 was really a big turning point for me. I unfortunately had a pretty significant health issue that year. Still don't know why. Got back from our anniversary trip, went to New York, saw some shows on Broadway, my wife and I.
Very cool.
We get home on our anniversary, so we went a little early, grandparents leave and all this stuff from watching the kids.
Excuse me.
And she goes to bed, and I set up and read, kind of we were talking earlier. I don't have a good relationship with sleep. So I'm reading this book, and about midnight, I get up to go to bed, and I feel this thing just pop. Weird feeling, never felt it before or since. Get instantaneously nauseous. End up passing out and banged my head on a metal trash can in our bathroom, and that's what woke my wife up. At this point, it's 2:30 in the morning. Long story short, my splenic artery ruptured.
Oh, wow. How does that happen?
Good question. I don't know.
Wow. No history in the family of that happening?
I mean, I'd had some pancreas stuff before, and they are connected, but it's just...
That's great.
Was it the flight? Was it? I don't know.
Pretty deadly, right?
Yeah, I lost 53% of my blood volume.
Whoa!
Before it stopped leaking. So I did a life flight from Mercy to Johns Hopkins, St. John's in Tulsa.
Gotcha.
And they did it.
Was that your first helicopter flight? I made it. I'm sorry, I just messed with you. Making a joke. I'm sorry. So that, I shouldn't have. That would forgive me. I was just trying to be your.
I don't care, man. Gallows humor is the only way to get through life. But that was hard, obviously. Traumatic for everybody involved.
What's the recovery time on something like that?
It was 3 months before I had replenished the blood.
That is insane.
Yeah. That was a really long time.
Well, when you say replenish, so they gave you blood, obviously. They didn't give you blood.
They said if you lose 1 more %, we'll do a transfusion. And then I stopped losing it.
Oh, wow. So how does that feel?
Awful.
Like,
and
what does that
take
like?
These nasty iron supplements, right? And eat, spinach and all. But no, you just feel exhausted and sick for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a tough recovery. So that kind of stalled some things. And then, I had to...
Did that change your perspective?
I had to come to terms with what's actually, am I doing this to myself? And I think to some degree I probably was.
Mm-hmm.
So for the next few years, I kind of said, what? The business is healthy. I like the team. I like my clients. Let's just kind of foot off the gas pedal. Let's just kind of see what happens. And then 2020 rolls around, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And COVID happens, so that's kind of the off year. And then 21, 22 is when I started looking for a third partner, somebody that could really stand up to brokerage, somebody that could help us get where we wanted to on software. It's been a big. I mean, the business wouldn't be what it is without Matt Adams and Charles Greathouse.
Awesome.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Was it hard to kind of relinquish that over, or was it just
So it wasn't a trust issue. Yes, it was hard, but I trusted Matt. Honestly, my biggest struggle was feeling like I wasn't working hard enough in my own company. It was 100% mental game. I was like, gosh, I used to do all this, and now time in my hands.
I've been there too.
It was a 2-year transition for me to get comfortable with leading and not doing.
I can relate. I had a conversation one time with you probably heard of him. Depends on whichever, but a guy named Steve Clark he owns ProPac, but he was one of with Kenny Tomlin in Rockfish.
I don't know him, but
I heard
know
of him.
Who he is. Yeah.
Well, one time I was lucky enough to get some coffee time with him, and I sat down. I was like, dude, because he's at this point, this guy's scaled like 4 or 5 companies, and I was like, how?
Yeah, I don't think I have it in me to do it again.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. No, it's a lot. It truly, people don't understand. They do not understand. Like, praise God. We're on year 15. We started around the same time, and I didn't realize this until I actually looked your stuff up.
Yeah.
As far as the federal government is concerned, it's 2010, but we had actually kind of about 2009.
Yeah.
But either way, I guarantee if you could go back, you can think back to a million different things and see the evolution for what it is now.
Yeah.
But I remember
And some of it I'm proud of.
Yes.
And some of it I would do very different.
120%.
Yeah.
Like there's just certain things that I wouldn't have invested so much time into.
My biggest frustration with myself from that period of time is that I never let it get off my mind. I was constantly preoccupied.
Obsessed. Yes.
And I don't know if it was visible. I don't,
Oh, 100% was. 100%.
I really regret that.
I do too.
I regret that because at the end of the day, it's a choice and a discipline. And now that I've kind of instituted that, like I might, need to vent in the car on the way home, but by the time I get home, I'm not working anymore.
Dude, 120%, and I'm glad we're having this discussion because entrepreneurs need to hear this. Well, it affects everything, man. It affects everything. You think that you're doing good, and you think that you're focused, and you think that you've set on the vision, and you can't let off the gas.
Yeah, the scarcity mindset's a bitch.
It really is. It really is. It really is. And so I just tell I've told a bunch of young guys that have come to me talking about, doing things. And I'm like, it's great to be ambitious, but you need to be present. And that's what you're saying.
Far more.
Well, it's far more important. At the end of the day, it's kind of like that thing that everybody says you don't realize until you've done it enough. But if you're in your hospital on your deathbed, you're not thinking, man, if I'd only closed one more deal.
Trust me.
You know what I mean?
I think about that all the time.
And
because we're all going to end up being there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right? And we're always going to surround ourselves with the people that we love, right? And the last thing in the world I want to have is regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think about it all the time. I meditate on that concept. People make these conspiracy theories about the skull and crossbones and things and what it means.
Mm-hmm.
But in antiquity, people would have that as a focus on meditation to remind themselves that they're mortal and to come to peace with that and then live their life knowing that one day they're done.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really, really important. It's been impactful to my life for sure.
God forgive me, which, praise God, God forgives us, but that doesn't mean there aren't implications for, your past. But, if one of my regrets is, people will never say that Matt Woolley didn't try and that he wasn't focused and that he didn't give a lot. But what some people can say, and unfortunately the people that were closest to me, that I wasn't always engaged. I wasn't always present. I was up worrying about that. Now that I see, I was up worrying about that client that I should have just let go because they were a jerk and they didn't care about me or my family. They just wanted what they wanted, kind of thing.
I feel that.
And or different stuff like that. But that's what I hope people actually hear and then say, okay.
I mean, I like talking about it because on one hand, I couldn't have lived a different life. There's something in people that start companies that you just can't turn off.
Yeah.
But you can be healthy with it, or you can be unhealthy with it. So I've learned to make peace with. No, this is what drives. This is what animates me. It's what makes me happy in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not putting that over my wife and my kids.
Oh,
obviously.
I know, but it's your.
But that's what I spend a third of my life doing, is working. And then a third sleeping, and a third with them.
Well, not a third sleeping with you, more like that. Laying around.
Sure, yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah. But you got to like it,
Yeah,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little ambition.
Not at all.
But it's putting it in perspective of it just can't be number one. It can't be number one, especially if you have a family. Can't be.
100%. Well, it becomes obsessive behavior, and then it becomes an idol. That's the way I view it. It's from my Christian perspective.
Yeah.
I've made it an idol.
It's an identity thing. For me.
Yeah. 100%. Well, and I always I'm from the school of hard knocks, and always had something to prove.
Yeah.
And that's not always healthy either.
Right.
It creates a drive, but it's not always healthy.
Right.
So that's
a lot of things that are good for you when you're a kid that aren't good for you when you grow up.
100%.
That's my therapist.
That's awesome. So what are let's talk about entrepreneurial reward. We've talked about the negative.
Sure.
What are the highs?
I really like my team, and one of the things that was most important to me in starting a company beyond the business the science part of it was, we all worked in good and bad environments. We've all worked with people that value us, and we've worked with people that don't value us. And the human value, made in the image of God, if you want to say it that way, it's the great equalizer. And so you can grind the grist to get as much out of somebody. It has diminishing returns. But I wanted a company where we unlocked human potential, right? And that the people were like, oh, it's Monday and I'm excited to go to work, And it's not just me that did that. Obviously, it has to be carried out by the leaders and the managers, things like that. But that's something I'm very proud of, that we have a place where, I think Charles says the word, there's psychological safety, to make a mistake or whatever. That's really important to me. On the flip side, more on the business side of things, I get incredibly bored very easy. So having, a company or whatever, you can create a new business. You can, try a new thing, go to a different trade show. You kind of make your own choices, and nobody's pushing you around generally.
That's awesome.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. You reminded me what I was going to tell you, and I know that because you're talking about your team, what Steve Clark told me was, I said, how did you excel a business? And he said, Matt, you need a superstar. What you need is a superstar. And it didn't really take with me
to work for you,
to work with or work for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's that, and it's just like you talk about with your partners. Sometimes it takes that to accelerate in a direction that you otherwise wouldn't have been, and that becomes infectious. And then I believe that you start seeing, in my experience, and the things I've heard about you guys too, you start seeing that becoming a part organically into the culture, where all of a sudden everybody
attraction.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. And everybody recognizes that talent too, and it's so detrimental to growth and to client retention and all these things.
You said the thing, visionary, a while ago. I've always had a hard time with that word. EOS uses the term. So you get a visionary, you got an integrator. I'm certainly not but I just have a discomfort with that term. Sounds self-aggrandizing, but we use this other system too. It's called 5 voices. So everybody is a combination of a pioneer, a creative, a guardian, a nurturer, and a connector.
Okay.
So like and the first 3 are your primary. So I'm a pioneer, connector, creative. Then they call it your blind spot. So you think you're better at it than you are. And then your nemesis is the thing that's just on the opposite end of your primary, which for me is nurturing. I'm not necessarily proud of that, but you don't create your personality. And I was having a conversation with somebody I work with when this was first starting to roll out. We've done it for a few years now. And he seemed disappointed with his assessment. The guy's a connector, primary connector. And pioneer was right after, But he goes, I just thought, I'd be a pioneer. And my question was like, okay, when you picture a pioneer, like this eye in the sky, what do you see? It's all like on a stage and leading people and rallying the troops and this kind of stuff. And I said, okay. He goes, what do you see? I said, me on a wagon going west. Like I'm not with I'm willing to go out there and do it, and hopefully somebody will But that comfort level with doing something new is, aside from really important relationships, is just my favorite thing in life.
That's awesome.
I have this innate belief that tomorrow can be better than today, and working towards that.
There's a beloved associate that works for KC we do business with, and it might have been on this podcast, but I've always sided on the area of negative. When I say negativity, and it's not because I'm a naturally negative person, but whenever I see a deal in front of me, I think, what is the worst possible thing that can happen in this? And anything better than that.
It's not a bad thing.
It's hunting. Yeah. It's not, well, that's always where I side, but you have to watch it because if you live in it, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, she had something that kind of helped change me a little bit. And I was like, you know what, you're right, which, the Bible instructs us to do this, count all things joy. But but hard to do. But she said, I believe that, and very similar to what you said, that, things are tough right now, but tomorrow will be better.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
And
it gives you some control. You can't always fix today, right? Circumstances happen, things happen to you, but you can at least believe that you have some control to improve tomorrow.
Right. Well, and as an entrepreneur, you have to have some of that in any type of entrepreneurial space, because you have to believe that it's going to work. You have to have complete buy-in, and because if you don't have buy-in, nobody else is going to.
Well, that's one of the weird things too. It's like you got to have an unusual amount of self-confidence, but then you don't want to be arrogant.
Right.
It's a weird line.
Yeah.
To thread.
With surety, but humble. Being sure but humble. And again, that's kind of what Scripture points us to as well, but it's easier said than done. And it's funny that you said too, I have to say this too, I've just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation because you said you don't like the word visionary. So
it just feels so.
I know. So I get you. What's funny is because I felt the same way in a lot of ways, but that's how I all books define it, and that's how I actually test. But here's the thing, though. In regard to that, I know what my limitations are too. Like I can see the forest for the trees on certain things, and people that work with me know that.
Yeah.
But they'll also be the first one to tell you, Matt can help.
Well, that's where the partners. That's where the partners of my wife come in, because I can live. I can live in the sky. I can live in the sky in perpetuity.
Right.
And my wife and Matt are both guardians according to their, this 5 voices thing.
That's awesome.
And so guardians want to protect what already is there, and I've already left what's there, thinking about where we're going. and they're really good at bringing me back down to earth, in very kind ways, typically. That I probably don't deserve. But that's I wouldn't call it a regret, because you got to learn things, but I didn't want partners at first. I wanted to do it on my own. And turns out you can do a lot more when you put three minds together with three different personalities.
2 is better than 1, 4 is better than 2. Yeah. No, I think that I agree. It's one of these things but you have to have the right partners.
Oh,
like
for sure.
For Design Steins at the beginning, that's what it was with us. It was me and Jesse started it, but there came a point where his vision wasn't the same as mine. But then it just so happens, things work out the way they're supposed to. Brittany came along, and we became partners, and it evolved into a whole new thing. And but in the right direction.
I didn't realize Brittany was a partner.
Yeah, Brittany is a partner. Me and Jesse Jacobs founded it, and Jesse left a couple of years ago. But she had joined on. She joined on 2020 working for us, and then in 2023 signed on because she wanted a part of the business, and it was just a thing worked out. But
cool.
But you got to have that buy-in. You have to have that people that can offset each other. Balance the seesaw. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, in my experience, it's just way this heavy. But you have to have somebody that's gonna round you out.
I'm happiest when I'm thinking about 2 to 3 years from now.
Yes. No, I'm hear you. No. That's you don't live in the now.
Today.
You understand the now, but you don't live in it. So let's talk about too. So what advice would you give to your family man? Obviously, what personal advice would you give to those that are involved in business? What's the young guy? The young guy comes in today. He's half our age.
So the thing that drives me nuts on this, people have asked over there is, hey, I think I'm going to start a thing, and maybe it's like mine, maybe it's something else. I'd like to pick your brain on it. Like, okay. And my first question is, what's your motivation? Like, what do you do you got that chip on your shoulder? Do you prove something yourself? Like with me, the chip was with me. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be successful. Wasn't looking around at what other people thought. It was I was my worst critic, and that was my initially motivation. Not super helpful. And so often they'll come back and say, work-life balance. Like, then don't start a business, man.
Right.
Start a side hustle, sure. Don't start a business if you're wanting to spend more time at home, because it just for the first 5 years it doesn't happen, or the business field. So there is that level. You got to be committed. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a few years where you really plow it out. But create that discipline to disconnect when you're not doing it. Right? And work late a couple nights a week, fine. But when you're at home,
be home.
Yeah. And whatever that process looks like for you, music on the car ride, meditating when you get out, whatever, figure out what that thing is. Because it can just eat you alive.
100%. To add to that, I think that one, I was always told, and this extends right off what you just said. A mentor once told me, he said, Matt, the scale's never going to be balanced. Your job is just to make sure it doesn't stay in one direction too long.
Yeah, that's good.
So I was like, that's basically it, because there's some things you also have to, it's all about who you're going home to as well, because not all, marriages understand it. You do, and an entrepreneur, you better have somebody that understands what it is to be an entrepreneur.
I was fortunate with my wife because her dad and her granddad on her dad's side, they're both business people.
Oh, okay, yeah. Just another day.
That part was really helpful, but I also benefited from her because she would call me out when I was making too much of myself. I didn't like it at first, but over time,
we all need correction.
It was really important, of like, this actually isn't the entire world, my little analytics company.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing you said struck with me too. I went to a recent, forgive me, I can't remember what it was called. It was, it's by Zach Stanley, he's part of it. Tim Stanley's son. I'm friends with Tim.
Oh, like the WeWork thing or
no, it's
some kind of leadership.
It's a leadership thing.
Yeah.
But I went to it, and there's a guy talking, and I thought this was great advice too. And I was like, man, I wish I would have heard that years ago. But he said, because he basically talked about me as what he's talking about. He said, yeah, I would say that I'm going home, but I'm on the phone all the way home, and I got a 40-minute drive, every day. So it's like I make use of it. But when I get home, I'm walking in the door like, yeah, blah, 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 and doing the thing,
Yeah,
that's not,
press,
that's not, And he said he made a rule that once he hit a certain point, it gave him 5 to 10 minutes, whatever, before he got to the house, all business stopped. And it's kind of like you said, I'll put on some music, or I'll put on a book, or I'll put on something different. And I said, no more. And he said then all his relationships started improving and everything started doing better, but you have to have that cutoff.
I used to be 5 minutes from our office, my home, so it wasn't much of a commute.
I understand, me too.
And a little over a year ago, we moved to our current space, a beautiful space, North Bentonville. I still live in Rogers. So it's a 20-minute commute.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how moody you are, but when I get in the car and I'm just in a bad mood, like I will just have it out. I will say everything that I didn't say that day.
Oh, really?
To all the people that I didn't say it to. And by the time I get home, like it's cathartic,
Yeah.
And I don't always need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to walk in a bad mood because something happened at work with a customer that had, my wife didn't do it, my kids didn't do it, They don't want me bringing that garbage home.
100%. It's
but I will have some very aggressive conversations.
James, you son of a... That's awesome. I've been there too. I'm like, that's what I should have said.
Right.
Or I cannot believe that guy. Yeah, it is good to do that. Well, and it's true. I call it everybody drinks from your well. So like we all have a well, and everybody drinks our water, right? So you bring it home. Yeah. How many times? Let's be honest. And we're dads too. So let's be. Dads are real great about this. But like, everybody's in a great mood, and then Dad shows up. Why is Dad so mad? Dad's ruining everything. And I had some again great advice popping in my head on that too. One of my good friends he's a few years older than me, but he's seen some forks in the road, and one time he said, I don't talk about work at home. I talk about it very little. I was like, really? And he made a good point, and I've actually started exercising this, and it's actually been really good. Now, I can go high levels. Obviously, it's great if there's that win and everything's moving that direction. Yeah. But if it's negative, don't go.
I don't want to relive it.
Well, it's not just reliving it too. I never thought about this one. He said, well, say for instance, if I got an issue, let's just make something up. Let's just pick on Charles. It's you and Charles, and then you go home. And it's like, you know what, Charles, that son of a he blah blah blah, and then blah 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 blah. Well, she hears all of that, and she is your defender. And so automatically, Charles is now an SOB.
Right.
With the reality is you go back and tomorrow you're like, Charles,
it's probably,
this is blah, blah, blah. But in her mind, she never gets that reset.
Right.
And that hit me. I was like, wow, that's a thing too, because you've planted this seed that never really gets resolved.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, that's another good thing too. Plus, nobody wants to hear that crap. Your focus is supposed to be the family. Now, there is a place for venting, but yeah. You know what I'm saying?
And my wife and I, we own our holding company together.
Oh, awesome.
So we have a holding company that owns the majority of High Impact.
Okay.
And she's always wanted me to tell her what's going on with business, and even like sounding board. She's great at reading people. Every time I've not gone with her opinion on a person, I've been burnt.
She has discernment. She has good discernment.
Good discernment, yeah. But then there's a line of like, I don't actually want to talk about this today. Like I just had to do
too
this
much.
hard thing.
It's been too much. Yeah.
I'm going to probably say more than I should.
Right. Been there.
And you see, but you schedule it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. we're having our own therapy session.
We are. I'll send you my bill. You send me yours.
Perfect. You first, though.
You see what we're turning. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, on a end note, because we're wrapping this up, who is High Impact's ideal customer? So let's do a plug for you guys.
I mean, there's actually a few different personas. Right?
Okay.
So for our full service brokerage, biggest business unit we have, that's 5 to 20 million, sometimes much more than that, but that's kind of the sweet spot in sales to Walmart. Right. For analytics only, runs a gambit. We work with tiny companies. We work with Elf Beauty. We work with Michelin tires. Analytics are analytics, right? And then on the software side of things, a much bigger spread. So I think our client that has the largest business that's software only about 400, 500 million a year. So it kind of runs the gamut. But if I just had to put it down on like one paragraph statement, it's probably that 5 to 20 million opportunity.
Awesome. Last question of the day. What gives James joy? What gives you joy in life, James?
My favorite thing in life is coming home at night and my kids having friends over and they're out in the pool or
having a good time.
That just warms my heart. I love that.
Blessing people with your blessings, right?
Oh, I just like my kids are happy and they want to be at our house.
Yeah, you're a haven.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, you're a haven.
It makes me very happy.
That's fantastic.
I like music too. I do a lot of music.
Oh yeah, dude. We got like 3 minutes left, and you got to bring this one up. All right, what's your favorite? What's your favorite?
Oh
music?
man, it's a wide range. But I Lumineers, Avery Brothers. I like Chris Stapleton. Sometimes I listen to Snoop. It's pretty wide, pretty broad range.
That's awesome.
Gospel on Sundays.
Yeah. On Sundays, I tend to enjoy the hymns. That's awesome. Well, James, thanks for coming on. It's been great having you. Promise you'll do it again?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.